Good morning, everyone. I haven't done this in a couple of weeks, so it's a little different for me. I've had a crazy couple of weeks. Um, so Brian Long is going to be on here in a moment. We're going to talk about diversity in the wine world. Frederick Wildman and Sons has asked me to get some diverse voices on here. Hello, Gabriella and Chateau Gorgazo. And Lottie. So Frederick Wildman has asked me to interview some different voices in the wine world. And so we're going to be discussing pride, growing up gay in the wine world, and then I'm also going to do some discussing Juneteenth next week. So let's see, I'm sending Brian in. So my schedule is tomorrow we're talking to sommelier gay. That's Josh DeCole in San Francisco. Hi, Brian.
Hey,
And
Jeff.
then on next Monday, Marbu Mark at Oceano Wines, he's the winemaker, discussing Juneteenth and that. Then Zwan Grays, you know Zwan, at Olmsted. We're talking about Juneteenth because it's Juneteenth coming up that week. And then Aaron Thorpe on the 21st and Leo Robachek on the 22nd. So all this on my website, long story, diversity, different voices. Hi, Brian.
Hi.
So you were the first person that popped into my mind when Frederick Wildman asked me to do this, to
Stop.
just talk about being different in the wine world. And I always think that being gay is like a personal thing. I don't want to air my personal business out there, but it's like who we are. And there are people out there who are not comfortable standing up for themselves or being themselves. And so I think it is a conversation to be had and talk about this. And you've been so eloquent on summation that you were the first person that I thought you'd make it easy and help me figure out what I wanted to ask, and then cover up any stupid mistakes I made.
And you will hopefully do the same for me.
100%, 100%. So I always like to ask people first, I want you to introduce yourself. Tell me how you got to where you are in the wine world in as much or as little detail, and then we'll talk about the past year after that.
Absolutely. So for me, this is a question, and I'm sure you get this quite a bit as well, is how did you get here? What drew you to the wine world, and where did you do your studies? Is the newest thing that a lot of people are asking. And so I've perfected and tweaked my response because tableside, we've got about 30 seconds to get in and out when you're in a 340 cover night. You're like, you know what? I don't really have a lot of time. So, I was not born, but raised in Alaska, and started in a small fishing village, and then moved north of Anchorage, where I lived in the last frontier, number 49 state. And it was a very cool experience, but I always was drawn to a city, particularly New York City, for quite some time. And so I made my way out east to Ithaca College, where I studied opera performance and music, which, if you've been following me at all, you understand that music is such a huge part of my relationship with wine as well. And I know that's the case for you too, Jeff. And we've shared that, and that's one of the things that sort of brought us together, which makes
100%.
me very happy.
Yeah.
And as I was singing and going about my lessons and auditions and what have you, there was a disconnect. And the disconnect wasn't with me in music, because that has never been broken, I don't think. But it was the disconnect between like here and here and my inside. And what really made the impact for me and made me more forthright with myself and with others and sharing my experiences is going to therapy and allowing myself to say my voice has a place in what I'm saying, no matter what I'm saying. Really, is you put thought behind it, you have something to say. And so I took my favorite things about opera, the language, the storytelling, the history, the culture, this collection of different areas, or similar areas really, and applying that to wine, and knowing that that path is winding and it's never ending. And at first it can be daunting, but it's part of the excitement for me, and knowing that there's security in knowing that you will never know everything. So it eliminates a certain sort of self-doubt that can come in. And so I said, okay, let me hit the books. And I went to WSET because I was not taking a fancy to the Court of Masters and the energy that I was getting from them even back then. And we all know how that's sort of shaken out over the past year or so. And I got myself some certifications. I went through my advanced certification and said, okay, cool. Now I need to find a wine job. I don't have really any wine experience, but I've been in the service in hospitality industry for years. And I was given a chance with the Alta Group, and I took it and ran with it from captain to captain sommelier to then full-time sommelier. And that's how I essentially got into the beverage side of this industry. And I've been having a lot of fun.
Well, I gotta tell you, I think that's the best way, because I've worked with sommeliers who have not worked the floor as a server, and I kind of tell people that when you're a server, you have your station of 4, 5, 6 tables. When you're a manager as well, but when you're a somm, and for me, I'm the only somm on the floor, it's like I have 7 waiters instead of 7 tables to kind of manage and work with, and it's a way to kind of break that down to manage your time and keep on top of everything. But I think that's the best way, and it's really just the experience. You can't beat it. Although I still can't walk out of my way, like I had to carry something along the way. I have to to not waste time and not to go.
Absolutely, all hands in, all hands out.
So weird. Yeah, I still am struggle with that. So you and a group of friends become friends of mine, but it started out I knew a few of you guys did summation, and I think that has also kept us. Well, that's how we met, actually. But can you talk about the pandemic year and what that has been like for a sommelier?
Yes, I felt it really deeply when I was let go. It was, of course, maybe it shouldn't have been sudden, but it was very sudden. I had the naive mentality, oh, it's Maria. It's Maria. We're not going to close. We power through anything and everything, And so when I was then left with my butt on the couch and trying to be the hamster on a wheel, essentially, and then being like, okay, no, you must face emotions and feelings, and how are you going to continue the passion and continue to do what you love to do and give yourself opportunities for growth while not being on the floor and not having the conduit of a restaurant and a wine program and the team that we worked with. You're solo, you're flying alone. And it was partially through Anna Christina reaching out to me and having discussions, and then eventually invited me onto the summation team. Summation. I don't know who I am. Over 200 episodes, and I'm still like flubbing the words. And it was kind of an eye-opener for me. Not to say that my experiences wholly had been negative, and that's not the case by and large. But it opened my eyes to a different kind of inclusion and a different kind of welcoming that was more familial rather than professional and sort of austere. And it helped me put together what I thought were disparate parts of my interests and passions, and understood how they could be included and woven together. And that allowed me to start my own business, Classic Method, and do private wine tastings, and also express how I saw connection between music, language, opera, the experience that I can try and give tableside and that hospitality, while being in a group of diverse and dynamic individuals. And it was invigorating to have this home base and these like soft pillows of support with the summation group. And it was and continues to be something that I draw energy from, all positive, and inspiration as well.
It's been just an insane year. Stephanie and AJ just popped on here. I want to say hi to them.
Hi guys.
And having these, again, Anna was the inspiration for my series. We had a kind of a chat. She said, get a plate of food and a glass of wine, and we're going to meet here at noon tomorrow and talk it out. And it was really a lifeline of realizing that even though we were all spread out or stuck at home, you could communicate and reach out. And it's not the same as a hug when you see your friend, but it's pretty close to just feel that connection even through here. Is that
true.
There's a weird feedback. I don't know what's happening.
It may be Second Avenue.
Oh, okay, good.
On my head,
the sirens outside. So let's see how to get into this. I guess it's Pride Month. Let's talk about Pride.
Yeah.
I was just listening to some podcast, I don't even know what, but they were like, no, Pride is for us. It's a protest. It's a way for us to stand up for ourselves. It's not something to be taken over by the corporations and to make money from. It's still celebrating a protest. And I know you have thoughts on Pride, and I would like to hear them so I can organize mine.
Well, Pride has taken on, I think, many different forms with me over the years. I mean, I came out when I was 14 in Alaska, which we joke, people joke that it's 10 years behind the times, but they're not really incorrect in that. And it was a difficult place, so Pride was much more. There was a lack of pride in it. It was more me trying to fit into my round peg into a square hole. It was the shame that sort of came along with coming out knowing that there was not a full acceptance or a full understanding and support system to guide you through this really individual experience. And Pride for me then became a way for me to not be ashamed and to be comfortable and powerful in the expression of my individual voice, and also provide maybe an example, but at least by being a more true version of myself and saying, okay, yes, maybe my wrists go a little limp and sometimes, I get a bit effeminate, and these are all fantastic things that are a part of who I am. And even if you don't know it, that expression, that energy, that allowance is a way for you to maybe provide the opportunity for someone else to take the leap and say, fuck them all, I'm gonna just do me. And I think that is part of what these conversations with you, and I'm super happy that we get to kick this off together, is doing. And yes, being gay, being trans, being non-binary is a personal experience in many ways. But even now in 2021, it is something that still needs to be a topic, still needs to be pushing the boundaries, because there's still a lot of question marks in a lot of people's eyes and minds, and there's a lot of hate still out there. And by having it be a part of the conversation and making ourselves vulnerable and showing our pride in everyday life, not just in one day or 1 month, but carrying it out through the entire year in as many aspects of your life as you are comfortable with, that for me is pride.
Well, because, I mean, what's the opposite of pride is shame. And you touched on the word shame. And I always, to wrap my head around that concept, is I kind of grew up thinking there was something wrong with me. And
Absolutely.
everybody has a version of that, whether your hair is not as curly or too curly or you're left-handed. I think everybody has that experience. And so I worked in so many busy restaurants and nightclubs. I was never really into the crowds of the Pride Parade, but I was so glad there were people out there being wild and crazy and exposing my parents to that, than people back home, even if it was just on the news in Illinois, watching what those crazy people in New York do. It was exposure, and it allowed us some breathing room to be ourselves. And so I'm very, very thankful for that. But I also still struggle to find my place in Pride every month. I'm like, am I supposed to be extra gay now this month? Or,
the answer is yes.
clearly. And Cosmos are back, apparently. And there you go. Cosmos, the pink
extra, honey.
appropriately so. But then I got to ask you, Brian, and I didn't warn you about this, but I wanted to just touch on it, that during this whole pandemic, you're not as old as me, but I know you can understand that we lived through another pandemic, and the AIDS pandemic was such a thing in people my age and older that it was just kind of, when you saw people not paying attention to the pandemic, this pandemic, it was very upsetting, because you saw that and especially when the gay crowd went to in Mexico and had those parties, and it's just like, don't you have any respect for people who died in the other pandemic, and take this seriously, and we know we can beat it if we all just come together and take care of each other.
Right.
And it was just, it brought up so many things, and I just have to say that there is the other pandemic that we all need to respect and be aware of. And
absolutely. And, though it was really past my time, I was born in 1985, it is something that not only continues on today, but if you do not recognize, appreciate, and respect the trials and tribulations that got here, this protest, the gay cancer as it was first trotted out, and understanding the humiliation and the sidestepping, actually completely ignorance of the AIDS crisis, and how many hundreds of thousands of individuals died from this before it was taken seriously, or there was an effort to even make it a wider issue, then you're not doing yourself the kind of justice as an individual. And you don't have to be gay to understand this. This is a human issue.
Well, exactly. And it's not just, even if it's any marginalized group, it's so complicated to talk about. I don't know what I want to say about it, but it's just, it's like, respect your elders and be aware of what happened before. And if you don't appreciate history, you are doomed to repeat it. And
absolutely,
we see these waves of the pandemic coming back and forth, and it's just,
and why it's important for you to not stay in just one, and we're going to get to maybe cliques or small groups, but to not just have friends your own age, to have friends of all spectrums and backgrounds. And this is diversity. This is what we've talked about on Summation. This is what Wine Unify is doing. This is what the Hue Society does. There are, if you intentionally are homogenous, you have no room for growth.
Right.
In truth, I think, personally, this is my belief, then you are also cutting yourself off from such amazing connections, and seeing a greater world outside of yourself that helps you become more humble, and also helps you realize that your individuality is something to be expressed and should not be muted, and should not have a muzzle on, because you are you. You are the only you out there, and hopefully the words that you put out into the world are thoughtful, are full of passion, and there's intent behind it.
Yeah.
You can go at 100 miles an hour, but if you don't have that velocity, if you don't have a target and a path in mind, then you're just it's a little chaotic, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, 2 points I wanted to, even like corporations are saying we need diversity of employment just for original and creative ideas, because if we're just going to have the straight white mentality, then we're missing out on so much richness of just problem solving and innovations. And then my other point escaped me, but I want to talk about, you mentioned cliques, and was the wine world inviting to you being different, and is it changed now with the Me Too, and Pride has changed, and even just since you've been in New York, I'm sure?
When I was figuring out that I wanted to transition from music into the hospitality industry, essentially, I said, okay, I'm a good server, pretty good server. but I want to elevate myself. I want to make a profession out of this. How do I do this? Do I want to be a manager? I tried that and it didn't go very well. Not for me. I think at points for other people, I was also like 25.
Yeah.
So a little too young in experience and personal placement, but I knew that I always loved wine. And when I said, okay, I'm going to move out and find another opportunity, my first and gut reaction was, I'm not going to be a sommelier. Those guys are assholes.
Mine was that too. Yeah.
I don't want to be around those guys. It's always guys. They're straight and they're broy and they're cliquey, even if they're not broy in the jock sense all the time. Yeah. It is something as a gay man who is firmly planted on the line between status quo and the other. I think it's difficult for me to put myself in a position where I know that I will be the minority the whole time.
Right.
And to be confident in expressing myself when it makes the others uncomfortable made me feel like I just needed to tamp it all down. And I wasn't about that. And then I tried to work in distribution, and that wasn't, you know pretty quickly if you've got the right kind of fit to be a rep. And again, I was like, okay, let's pivot again. Let's go back to service, but I'm going to go fine dining. And that's where I met the Alta Morea group. And David Schneider gave me a wonderful opportunity to be a part of the iFiore team, coming in as a captain, and sort of saw, I guess, my potential and the passion that I had for not only the refinement, but the kind of appreciation that you need on the back end of it. Mm-hmm. And saying the kind of artistry, the kind of experience and compilation to have a beautiful dish with a thought behind it and textures and flavors, and then how the sommelier gets to come in and elevate that experience by providing a beverage, whether it's beer, whiskey, cognac, wine, to make this something that's memorable and something that can be personal, but also seamlessly executed at the same time. And so I then got to jump in. And when I started my somm journey, it was a strange one because some of the choice things that were expressed to me by various individuals were, don't be so emotional.
Wow.
And maybe if you weren't so emotional, this wouldn't bother you. Oh. So you just need to calm down. I'm just like, you're the one who's wrong. So then you start, even in my assurity of self, you start to doubt yourself. And I feel this is where that sort of imposter syndrome comes in. It's like, is this really like what this is about? And is this really what I'm going to be faced no matter where I'm working in what level of restaurant that I'm working? And it almost moved me out of the wine world and just sort of left this question mark. And you power through and you say, okay, I'm gonna dial it back because it's easier for everyone except for me to do that. And it's tough to say that now, and it kind of makes me emotional because you compromise and you sacrifice part of yourself just to do what you're passionate about and what you love.
Yeah. It reminds me of high school. When I started in the wine world, I came up very slowly through it. And you had the leaders at the time who had kind of their clique of cool bro guys. And it was, I don't know how much I brought to it, that I just brought my own discomfort in public or with those people. It just reminded me of the jocks in high school, and I just kind of shied away from them. But so I don't know how much I brought to it, but it was definitely there. But I do think it's changing, and I'm very struck by Marquita Levy's story about going to one of those big, and I picture the big Skurnick portfolio tasting at the Metropolitan Room, and
Yeah.
being, and like 10 years ago being the only black girl in the room, and it's just like I have felt that. I'm like, I'm the only gay in the village at this, in this room. But
love the Little Britain reference. Thank you.
but you have to, do I need to bring my latex tank top to stand out, or can I? It's a weird thing because we could also, compared to like Marquita's experience, pull it back and tamp it down and fit in, and it's just so many things that it's weird to talk about like this, but it's very, very good too. Another thing I want to ask and see your experience, because again, you're a little younger than me. When I first started going to gay bars, this was in Miami, and it was kind of secretive. It was always kind of dark. The windows were blacked out.
For sure.
And I very clearly remember the first gay bar in New York City was G, that on like 19th Street, that had a big open window, and they're like, "We're happy to be here and look in, and this is who we are." And so there's that progression, but it's also going to a gay bar was a place where you could be yourself and you felt at home and safe. It was a bar culture, and if they did have wine, it was not very good wine. It was probably opened 3 days ago. And so I find that still, if a group of like 2 couples or 4 gay guys come in of almost any age, they're generally not going to have wine. They might have a couple cocktails and then maybe have a bottle of wine. And I would just like to know your experience. Is that just me being noticing it and it's not true, or it is true?
Yes.
Always
I think that there are some. I mean, we had this lovely gay couple last night that came in, and they're like, "We're gonna make it easy: 2 Titas and soda." Like, for me, one of the classic gay cocktails: vodka soda, no calories, easy to sip on, done and done. And there is, I would say, 40 to 60-year-old bracket of gay men that come into Maria who are much more focused on the wine. Maybe they'll have a cocktail to start. It's, but there's I think that it's not all cocktails all the time, but I will say that the bar culture of the gay community, which is very much the gay community, especially in a large urban setting like New York City. Yes, I went to the bars, and yes, it was exciting because I'd only been to a few gay bars before I moved to New York City, and those were in Ithaca in college. So it was a titillating experience for me, but one that I didn't really connect with. I'm a little bit of a homebody. I like to listen to my Rachmaninoff and Handel and Mozart and sit with a glass of champagne or a glass of Gewürztraminer and have conversation and be stimulated not only taste buds but mentally. And yes, there are times to go like let it all loose on the dance floor, but that's not my go-to. And I think there's a large set of gay men and women and non-binary and trans individuals who, while the community is based around these bars because that's where we had to thrive, that's where the opportunity that we had to thrive, because it could not be public, it could not be exposed for fear of quite literal incarceration. You couldn't even wear 3 pieces of female clothing, or if you're were identifying female, male clothing, without being arrested. Easy as that.
Very basic, really.
So if you weren't part of the bar culture, then you didn't have a safe space to go to. And so much of that, I think, is the carrying over and what I'm hearing you say. But I'd like to think that there's a little bit more visibility and allowance for us to be on not just the cocktail side of thing. Do we have gay wine bars? Not that I'm aware of. Maybe let's go into a venture together, Jeff.
Maybe.
An all-inclusive wine bar.
Well, but that's another one of these. The reason this conversation is so nice for me is because I've wanted to have this conversation about. I grew up in, I bartended for a very long time, and it was the bar culture and for the gays, and there's not a lot of gay guys in wine. But then, as I've been learning more and more, there's not a lot of Latino or Asian or trans. It's growing, and it's becoming more accepting, and it's becoming much more mixed. And thank God, especially in this past year, I got to say, with the Black Lives Matter and the Me Too, and everything has just opened up, and it's a much more open experience. I think we need to get some of the old guard in Europe on board with that. They haven't experienced that so much. But that's going to come, because as you get people who are comfortable being themselves as you go on wine trips, we are then exposing the old world and the small towns, because if you really think about where wine comes from, it's the countryside, and
Absolutely.
And they're fairly conservative. So it just all needs to be said, and it's very it's really good to talk to you about these things. Yeah. We're at the half hour, but I want to just ask you if I missed any of the big points that we talked about. But I also want to, before I forget, say that we were brought together by Frederick Wildman, and this is one of the wines they make. Hugel is one of the great producers in Alsace. And I do think they sent a Gewürztraminer this time. And I was telling you earlier that I think this is one of those wines that is good with it's a brunch wine. You can drink it with eggs and everything. You want to know one of my dirty secrets that I'm just starting to get comfortable sharing is I can't swirl.
Get dirty with me.
Really bad swirling. So I'm always swirling off screen.
Set it on the table, Jeff.
Exactly. Well, it's the wrist. I'm neurotic about my wrist.
Please, I mean, I've been at the Somm station at Maria and being like, oh yeah, okay, let me dive into this, and it just like, whoosh. Right? Good, Brian. Good. Yeah, you're a pro.
Always. Did I cover everything? Do you want to bring up anything? Do you have any?
No, I think that the only thing that I would add to, and it's really a continuation of what we were saying, is a challenge and a hope to lay the seed to let you project yourself, whatever you think is maybe making others uncomfortable. I think if you're coming at it with positive energy and you're not being mean-hearted or down-putting, negative in what you're expressing, then I think you're going to be massively surprised and excited to see that the acceptance, the engagement that you have just by releasing some of the pressure from your heart and your shoulders and your mind, it can be quite rewarding. And the more you allow that, it's like flexing muscles and doing those stretches. You start with what's maybe slightly uncomfortable outside of your box, but the feedback and the experiences that I've had when I'm just unabashedly 100% myself is the time where not only I'm the most liberated and the most happy, but also the times where I'm the most engaged, not only with guests, but also with colleagues and the people that I work with outside of Maria.
That's really good advice, because I gotta say that I am fairly on guard all the time and at work, because when you go to the table, I used to work in Nantucket, and so many people would come to the restaurant and they would say, so what do you do? What's your story? And they kind of ask for entertainment. And there's a bit of that when you're a somm going to the table and they say, can you do the show for us? Can you tell us about wine? And I'm like, okay, I guess, what do you want to know? It's Sancerre. There's good Sancerre. I love it. Don't get me wrong. But
absolutely.
And so there is this fine line of being performative, being yourself. You do have to protect yourself, because sometimes by opening up, you can get hurt by people in the restaurant business, colleagues, and all that. So it's really good advice, and I admire and honor your bravery to be yourself, and especially coming out at 14 in Alaska is, by the way, you've got the shortest handle on Instagram of anybody I know, AKDL, so if nothing else, Alaska gave you that.
Thank you, right?
Well, I'll let you go. I really appreciate your taking the time. This was a little awkward for me, maybe for you, and sensitive, but I wouldn't have wanted to do it with anybody else the first time. That sounded weird, but
I love it, Jeff.
it was. I really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. It was
Absolutely.
really good to talk to you and to be open and honest, and hopefully, our sharing our experience will make it easier for somebody else out there.
I agree. This is a conversation that I think can happen more, and sharing these stories is part of bringing diversity into the wine world. Yes, it's our BIPOC colleagues. Yes, it's the people who have been set aside, but we are also part of that group. And yes, you're looking at two white men, but it's quite a different life experience that has brought us to this point, I would say, than a cis white man. In the same,
100%.
With the same trajectory almost, which is...
Yeah. But it's a very good point. There are still people out there who could use a shoulder to lean on or that need support, and hopefully we can be that for them.
Absolutely.
So,
and let ourselves provide the opportunities that maybe we didn't have, that comfortability, I'm going to teach you these lessons the hard way just like I was taught. So we're putting you through the same ritual, almost humiliation and hazing that can be part of the experience as a sommelier, instead of saying, this kid's got passion, he's smart, she's smart, they're smart, and saying, okay, let me give you this, and this to think about, and come back and talk to me about these three producers and why they're important in Burgundy or Alsace or Ribera del Duero, and providing that kind of excitement instead of saying, well, you don't know this, so how can you call yourself a somm? Or I can't believe you don't know that. No, it's okay. Let me teach you something now. Let me expand your horizons. So thank you, Jeff, for having me. And I know I'm continuing on past a half hour, but it's okay. This is a wonderful conversation, and I'm really touched that you thought of me to kick off this series with you. And thank you, Frederick Wildman, again for providing the wine and the opportunity to speak about this, especially during this month.
Thank you, Frederick Wildman, for that. All right, man. Take care of yourself. It's really good to talk.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Bye.